The hall was already awake before she arrived. Soft voices moved through the rows of seats like a low tide, rising and falling without hurry. People leaned toward one another, sharing quiet thoughts, small jokes, and expectations they had already made up in their minds. Some smiled. Some nodded. Some checked the program again, as if they needed confirmation that tonight would go exactly as planned. Coats were folded over arms. Programs were held loosely in hands. Shoes tapped gently against the floor. It was the kind of evening where everyone believed they knew what was coming. Even before the first note was played, the stage lights were warm, but not bright yet. They gave the room a calm glow, like the last light before sunset. At the center of the stage sat the piano. Its surface was smooth and dark, reflecting just enough light to look alive. It stood quietly, patient and still, as if it had been waiting all day, and it had. Behind the curtain, she stood alone. She didn't move much. She just listened. Every sound reached her: soft laughter, the shuffle of feet, the low hum of people settling in. It all felt louder from here, closer, like the hall was breathing around her. Her hands were cold. Not shaking, but close to it. She pressed her fingers together and felt the thin fabric of her dress between them. It was simple, clean, nothing fancy. She had chosen it carefully, not because it stood out, but because it felt honest. Like her, still, a small doubt crept in. Was it too simple? Did it make her look smaller than she already felt? She pushed the thought away, but it didn't fully leave. A helper nearby offered a polite smile and a short nod. There was kindness in it, but also distance. Then the helper stepped away, as if giving her space, or maybe as if there was nothing left to do. The moment had come. When she walked out, it happened almost at once. A few heads tilted slowly at first. Someone let out a short laugh, quick and surprised, then covered it with a cough. Another whisper followed, then another. It wasn't loud. It wasn't meant to hurt, but it was there, and she felt it. The audience had expected something else, someone taller, someone older, someone who looked confident without trying, someone who matched the picture they already had in their minds of what a performer should be. Instead, they saw her. She walked carefully, her steps light against the wooden floor. Each step felt louder than the last, as if the hall was counting them. The space around her felt bigger now, wider than before. It was as if the room had stretched just to remind her how small she was inside it. She kept her eyes forward, not because she was brave, but because she was afraid that if she looked too closely, the doubt in their faces might stop her feet. She had known this would happen. Not in this exact way, but close enough. The feeling was familiar. Too familiar. It had followed her for years. In small rooms, in practice halls, in quiet places where people decided who she was before she ever had the chance to show them. Too quiet. Too unsure. Too different. She reached the piano bench and paused. The room was not completely silent, but it had changed. The laughter had faded. The whispers had softened. What remained felt like curiosity or waiting. She sat down. The bench felt firm beneath her, solid, real. She adjusted it slightly, just as she had done hundreds of times before. The small sound of the wood moving echoed more than she expected. A few people shifted in their seats. Her heart beat faster. She placed her hands in her lap and took a slow breath. She reminded herself to breathe the way she had practiced so many times. In through the nose, out through the mouth, slow, steady, but her chest still felt tight. For a moment her mind drifted not far, just enough to remember where she had started. She had not grown up around large halls or bright stages. Music had come to her quietly. Late evenings, a small room, a worn instrument that never sounded quite right, but tried its best. She remembered sitting alone, feet not touching the floor, swinging slightly as she played. She remembered notes that felt too big for her hands. She remembered mistakes. Many of them. Fingers missing keys. Sounds falling apart before they could finish. She remembered feeling embarrassed. She also remembered staying even when it was hard. Even when it felt lonely. Even when it felt like no one was listening. Especially then, there had been days she wanted to quit. Days when the doubt felt heavier than the music. Days when people told her kindly that maybe this wasn't for her. They didn't say it in harsh ways. You're good, but there are many talented people. Maybe something else would suit you better. She learned early that doubt doesn't always shout, sometimes it smiles. Her eyes rested on the keys now. The piano was familiar. That helped. Wood, keys, space, it didn't judge her. It never had. The room felt far away, like she was looking at it through water. She could sense the audience, but not clearly. That distance felt safe. That was how she liked it. Still, one thought slipped in, uninvited. What if they're right? What if she didn't belong here? Her fingers twitched slightly, then stopped. She rested them gently on her knees again. She wasn't ready yet. Not just yet. The program said she was next. It didn't say anything about her story. It didn't mention the long nights or the quiet mornings. It didn't talk about how many times she had played the same piece until it felt like breathing. It didn't explain why this moment mattered so much, but she knew. She lifted her head and glanced up. Just for a second, rows of faces looked back at her. Some were kind. Some were blank. Some still held that soft amusement, the kind people don't realize. They show she didn't blame them. They didn't know her. She looked back down. Her teacher's voice returned to her memory. Not loud, not dramatic. Just steady and calm. Don't rush, it used to say. Let the silence be part of the music. Silence. The hall had settled into one now. A full silence. A waiting silence she realized she was holding. Her breath again and let it go slowly. Her shoulders dropped. This was the moment. Before the space where fear and choice met. She could let the laughter win. Let it shrink her. Let it make her play smaller than she was, or she could do what she had always done, play honestly. Her hands rose. They hovered over the keys. Just for a second, time stretched. Somewhere in the audience, someone leaned forward without thinking. Someone else folded their arms. A child swung their legs gently under a seat. Unaware of how quiet the room had become, she placed her fingers on the keys, but did not press yet. In that pause, memories came quickly, being told she was too quiet to lead. Being told confidence mattered more than feeling. Being told to be louder, bigger, different. She had tried. It never worked. What worked was this: stillness, focus, truth. Her fingers curved naturally now, as if they had found their place on their own. The piano felt warmer than before, like it recognized her touch. The hall held its breath with her, though it didn't know it yet. She closed her eyes. Not to shut the world out, but to step into something deeper. This wasn't about proving anyone wrong. She didn't think about that anymore. This was about speaking in the only way she knew how. She pressed the first key, and just before the sound fully formed, just before the music truly began, the world felt perfectly balanced, like everything was waiting to see which way it would fall. The first note was soft, so soft that a few people didn't notice it right away. It didn't rush forward or ask for attention. It didn't try to prove anything. It simply appeared, gentle and steady, like a breath taken after a long wait. Then came the second note, and the third. Slowly, carefully, the music began to take shape, as if it was waking up along with the room. Each note stepped forward with care, not wanting to break the quiet that had settled over the hall. Her fingers moved with ease, not because she was trying to impress anyone, not because she wanted applause. They moved because this was where they belonged. The piano answered her touch without resistance. Each key responded as if it had been waiting just for her, as if it recognized her hands the way an old friend does. The room started to change. At first, it was only small things. A whisper stopped halfway through a sentence. A foot that had been tapping without thought slowly went still. Someone who had been leaning back shifted forward, as if pulled by something they couldn't explain. No one laughed now. The music grew stronger, but never loud. It didn't rush. It didn't try to be big or dramatic. It moved at its own pace, calm and honest, like a story being told quietly to someone who truly wanted to listen. She kept her eyes closed, not because she was afraid of the audience anymore, but because the music felt clearer this way. When her eyes were closed, She wasn't sitting on a stage under warm lights. She was somewhere else. She was back in that small room from years ago. Back to late nights when the world outside was asleep. Back to early mornings when her fingers felt stiff. But she played anyway. Back to playing the same part again and again until it stopped hurting and started to feel true. Her shoulders relaxed. Her breathing slowed. The tightness in her chest loosened. Little by little, as if the music itself was gently untying something that had been knotted for a long time. The audience felt it too. Even if they didn't know how to explain it, something about the sound pulled them in. It wasn't perfect. There were no fast tricks or sharp moments meant to amaze. No sudden flashes meant to shock, but there was feeling in every note. Feeling that came from patience, from waiting, from not giving up. A person in the front row swallowed hard and blinked more than usual. Surprised by the sudden weight in their chest, someone else folded their hands together and rested them in their lap, as if holding on to the sound so it wouldn't slip away. The child who had been swinging their legs earlier stopped moving and leaned forward, eyes wide, listening with a seriousness they didn't even understand yet. The music continued. It rose gently, like light coming through a window at the start of the day. It carried weight but not heaviness. It felt like hope mixed with memory, like something lost long ago and quietly found again. She didn't think about the audience now. She didn't think about how she looked. She didn't think about what they might be thinking. She was listening to herself. And for the first time that evening, she felt completely steady. Her fingers moved across the keys, sometimes quick, sometimes slow. Then they paused just long enough to make the silence meaningful. She remembered the words she had been taught long ago. Let the silence speak too. The pause landed softly in the room. No one moved. It was as if everyone was afraid that even the smallest sound might break what was happening. Then she continued. The sound deepened. Not louder, but fuller. The wrapped around the hall, filling the space between the seats, climbing gently up the walls, settling into corners no one ever noticed before. The piano no longer felt like an object on a stage. It felt like a voice, and that voice was saying things no words ever could. In the audience, people began to feel things they hadn't expected. One person thought of a moment they had given up too soon and felt a quiet ache they hadn't felt in years. Another remembered a dream they once loved deeply, then slowly set aside because life got busy. Someone else felt tears come without warning, without reason they could explain. The laughter from earlier felt distant now, almost forgotten, like something that belonged to a different version of the night. The music didn't ask for forgiveness. It didn't explain itself. It didn't defend her. It simply existed. Her hands moved with confidence now, not the loud kind, not the kind that demands attention, but the quiet kind that comes from knowing who you are. Even when others donned single quotes each note carried a piece of her journey. Every doubt, every late night, every moment she chose to keep going when it would have been easier to stop. She had spent years learning how to be heard without shouting, and now the room was listening. A person near the back wiped their eyes quickly, hoping no one noticed. Another didn't bother hiding it at all. Tears slipped down slowly, not from sadness, but from something deeper, something gentle, something human. The music reached its highest point. Not with force. But with clarity. It felt like standing at the top of a hill and seeing far beyond what you thought was possible, like understanding something without needing it explained. Then, slowly, it began to settle. The notes softened again. They became fewer, more careful, like footsteps moving away but leaving warmth behind. Her hand slowed. The final notes came quietly, as if they didn't want to disturb the moment they had created. And then silence, real silence, the kind that feels full, not empty. For a long second, no one moved. Not a cough, not a shuffle, not even a breath that could be heard. She kept her hands resting on the keys, her eyes still closed. She wasn't thinking about applause. She wasn't waiting for a reaction. She was listening to the quiet. It felt different now. Safe. Then she opened her eyes. The room looked changed. Faces that had once held doubt now held something. else, surprise, respect, emotion. Some people were smiling softly, as if afraid a bigger smile might break the moment. Others were still wiping their eyes. A few looked as if they had just woken from a deep dream. She slowly lifted her hands from the piano and let them rest in her lap. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then one person stood, then another, then another. Applause filled the hall, not polite, not careful, but full and real. People clapped with both hands. Some cheered without thinking. Others simply stood, hands pressed together, eyes shining. She froze for a moment, unsure how to react. This wasn't the response she had imagined. She had hoped for acceptance, maybe quiet approval. She had not expected this. Her chest tightened again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was something warm and overwhelming, like relief mixed with gratitude. She stood slowly and turned toward the audience. She didn't bow deeply. She didn't smile widely. She simply stood there, and that was enough. The applause continued, rolling through the hall like a wave that didn't want to end. The laughter from earlier felt like it belonged to another lifetime. She looked out and met a few eyes, not all of them. Just enough. They weren't looking at her appearance now. They were looking at her truth. When the applause finally softened, she sat back down for a moment just to breathe. Her hands trembled slightly now, the feeling catching up with her all at once. She let out a slow breath and smiled. To herself, not a big smile, just a small one, the kind that stays later. As the lights shifted and people began to move again, quiet conversations filled the hall. But they sounded different now, softer, thoughtful. People spoke about how the music made them feel, about how they hadn't expected it, about how something so simple had reached them in a way they didn't understand, but knew they would remember. She walked off the stage without noise, behind the curtain. She paused. For a moment, she rested her hand against the cool fabric and closed her eyes again. The sounds of the hall felt far away now. She thought of the younger version of herself, the one with feet that didn't reach the floor, the one who practiced alone, the one who kept playing even when no one was listening. She wished she could tell that version something. Not that it would be easy, not that everyone would understand, but that it would matter. She opened her eyes. The helper from before met her, with a wide smile this time. Not polite, not distant, real. Well done, the helper said quietly. She nodded, unsure what to say. Words felt small. As she stepped away, she didn't feel taller or louder. She didn't feel changed in a way that erased her past. She felt more herself, and that was enough. That night, many people would go home carrying a quiet feeling they couldn't name. Some would remember the sound weeks later. Others would remember how it made them pause, and she would remember the moment when the room stopped judging and started listening, not because she demanded it, but because she spoke from the deepest, truest place she knew, and sometimes that is all it takes.